All right, let's see.
It's still loading.
It's still loading. Hi.
Redirecting to Facebook Live.
Go, go, go. We're going to be live. That's Liz.
Liz, it doesn't look like Liz. Her hair looks all red. Look at that. You look really good as Liz.
Stop. Oh. She's going to be live on Facebook. Are we live?
Did you have to click anything else after that? Because I'm not seeing.
Just reload
Here we go.
reload. All right. Hi. Welcome to Marine Science Institute's virtual Earth Day on the Bay. I'm Tiff Mersey-Moyes, Community Outreach Coordinator, and I'm excited to have you joining us today. In a few moments, our 90-foot research vessel, the Robert G. Brownlee, will be embarking on an adventure into the South San Francisco Bay to learn about the different creatures that call it home. The participants of this voyage will get firsthand experiences collecting live fish, searching the benthos for the bottom of the bay for invertebrates, and looking at live plankton samples on our video microscopes gathered from our shipside plankton tow. Our virtual program will bounce back and forth from onboard live video feed of activities to online discussions with Liz Sheet, oceanographer extraordinaire. This program was made possible by our awesome sponsors. I would like to shout out our appreciation to Bye Bye Mattress and Peninsula Clean Energy, our super awesome community builders who sponsored our Earth Day events. So without any further ado, thank you for joining and have a great voyage.
All right, so everybody is starting to board our research vessel, the Robert G. Brownlee. I'm going to go ahead and share just a little video about who we are at the Marine Science Institute.
At Marine Science Institute, we provide a hands-on learning experience with some of the most fascinating marine life in the San Francisco Bay. We have been a leader in environmental education for more than 50 years.
As a student, I really like playing the games, going on the boats, going tide pooling, and touching all the animals.
It's really fun to go into the mud and try to look for invertebrates. There's also touching fish and guessing what kind of fish it is.
We are a non-profit organization that inspires respect and stewardship for the marine environment through interactive learning.
I really like where we get to make our own species of animal and talk about the different types of adaptations.
Students, teachers, and volunteers of all ages can get involved with our programs in the classroom, on the water, and in the field. We offer a wide variety of educational field trips, after-school programs, and a summer science camp that enrich students' understanding of the San Francisco Bay marine environment.
Other people should come here. It has way more exploring than other stuff that I've been to.
Being outside and experiencing this firsthand is much more powerful than learning in a textbook or even seeing a video. They get to actually touch, see, interact, put animals back into the tide pools and see what that experience is like. So much more powerful.
I think the coolest thing as an instructor is that you have the opportunity to inspire these kids, the next generation of conservationists, to teach them the importance of the environment and take care of their own home.
Together, we can protect our marine life and its natural habitat.
Other people should volunteer because it's just a great experience. It looks good on a resume and it's also extremely fun to do.
It doesn't take that much experience to get involved. Your donations, your help, everything counts. It's a lot of hard work sometimes, but I wouldn't have it any other way to be a part of this program.
As Marine Science Institute celebrates our 50th anniversary, we invite you to invest in our mission. Become a part of our close-knit community. Join our crew as a donor, influencer, volunteer, or teacher. Help us engage, educate, and inspire.
All right. So as we are getting ready to depart here, they're putting up the gangway, getting ready to have our ship leave the dock and head out into the San Francisco Bay. This is our captain, Captain Jackson. And my name is Liz. I work here at the Marine Science Institute, and I will be helping us to explore this awesome habitat as we go through our day today. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat box. I'm more than happy to answer those to the best of my ability. So we're basically going to check in and out between the boat and showing you some of the cool stuff that we have the opportunity to see and learn about in the San Francisco Bay. So as you can see, what they're doing here is kind of pulling the lines off of the boat, getting ready to actually depart into the bay. Anyone's first time with the Marine Science Institute? Has anybody ever actually had the opportunity to join us on our boat before? All right, so just like as if you were to head out on our boat, one of the first things that we do is review this habitat that the boat is actually going to be headed out into. And so as we have the boat start departing, I'm going to go ahead and bring up a picture of this bay. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Maria, Megan. Hi, Michael. Nice to see you. All right. So just for reference, we are located in California. Our boat is leaving from Redwood City right now. We are at this little yellow star here, and we'll be headed out into the San Francisco Bay. Usually we spend time between the Dumbarton Bridge and the San Mateo Bridge. I'm not quite sure which direction our captain is heading today, but I'll let you know a little bit more about where we are when the boat starts heading out in that direction. So if we look at the bay from outer space, what we see is something like this image here. Some people like to say that this looks like the mermaid. Some people say it looks like a fish to them. I've heard some people say it looks like Pac-Man. I've heard all sorts of different things that people tend to visualize. So some people that say the mermaid, we've got a head up in this section here. And then the tail kind of coming down towards the south part of the bay where our boat will be hanging out. And then it looks like she's got a really long ponytail off to the side, kind of a pointier nose up here, and arms reaching out to this larger body of water. Does anyone want to take a guess what our larger body of water is out here that's connected to our San Francisco Bay? Nice, Bethany. Yeah. So this is our Pacific Ocean out here. And the only place for this water from the Pacific Ocean to enter the San Francisco Bay is underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. This is our one opening here. But we've got some other types of water that also flow into the San Francisco Bay. We've got a couple of them up here. Is anyone familiar with what these two wiggly pieces are up here? So we've got two big rivers that hang out up here. At the top we have the Sacramento River, and then we have the San Joaquin River. And both of these rivers are bringing in fresh water to the San Francisco Bay. So as this fresh water comes in, it's mixing with this salt water that's being brought in through the opening underneath the Golden Gate Bridge from the Pacific Ocean. And it's mixing up together to create another type of water. Anybody familiar with what our mixture of fresh and salt water would be? Very good. Yeah, this is what we call brackish water. So our brackish water here, it's one of the things that kind of makes our bay unique, something that makes us an estuary. And so we've got this fresh water coming in through our river systems, but there's actually a couple of other ways that fresh water join us here in the San Francisco Bay. One of those is just any sort of rain or precipitation falling directly in the bay or falling along the edges of our cities, our mountains, and flowing down through this area until it reaches the San Francisco Bay. So maybe that rain or snow melts up in our mountains and works its way through small creeks or streams until it gets out here in the San Francisco Bay, or maybe it just flowed across our land, entered our storm drains on the side of our street, and flow out into the San Francisco Bay that way, kind of traveling through what we would consider to be our watershed, this local area of land where all of our different water is flowing across it, flowing downhill, joining up with smaller bodies of water, we often will refer to as tributaries, that take that out to our larger body of water. And so that's another way that that fresh water is entering this bay. And the last one has to do with humans. Down here in the South Bay, where the majority of us live right around the edges of this bay, every time we turn on a faucet or we flush a toilet or we take a shower, we do the dishes, we do our laundry, all of that water eventually goes through our sewer system out to the wastewater treatment plant. And at the wastewater treatment plant, they are going to do their best to clean out the majority of things that have now entered that water system from our homes and places like that. And once that's clean enough, then they will actually release that into the San Francisco Bay. And so for this portion down here, the south part of the bay, what you'll notice is that we actually tend to get more freshwater input due to humans in this portion of the bay than we do from our rain or our river systems. Is anyone familiar with whether this is a deep environment or a shallow environment? So this is a relatively shallow environment compared to the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean is known to be thousands of feet deep. Some of our deepest spots, like the Marianas Trench out here, something close to 7 miles deep. And so what we'll see inside of the bay is a much shallower habitat. We're looking at something here that's generally under 20 feet deep. The deepest opening in the San Francisco Bay is right underneath that Golden Gate Bridge, and it's somewhere around 360 feet deep. But down here in the South Bay, we are looking at something closer to about 16 feet on average. There's a lot of sections of our bay where there's very little water at all. It's maybe under a foot deep along these edges. And we actually have channels that run through that have been dredged out to make sure that our large shipping containers can actually work their way through and make their way down to the different ports that they need to access. All right. So my question to all of you would be, will freshwater or saltwater float? If we put the two in a container together, which one of those should actually float? So we've just got another little view here of the boat actually leaving our dock, kind of heading out into the bay itself, kind of following along the edge here of what we call Bear Island. This is one of our marshes. Marshes actually happen to be something that allow a couple different features to happen. It provides habitat for many different organisms, both plants and animals, as well as a couple of endangered species use the marshes around the edges of our San Francisco Bay. It's something called a salt marsh harvest mouse. It's very, very small, smaller than your thumb, as well as something that kind of reminds me of a chicken called the California Ridgeway rail. It's a type of bird. And they both use the marsh along the edges of the San Francisco Bay. Marshes can also help us to filter out water, help to filter that water naturally. They're not perfect, but they definitely increase the quality of the water in this area. And one that maybe is less commonly known is marshes are actually really good for protecting cities from flooding. They absorb a lot of that water energy. And they're one of the things that they think will help us as we continue to see effects of things like sea level rise. They think that these marshes will help us protect some of our cities from some of that flooding. So if you'd like to do a little science experiment with us, you will want to grab either 2 cups or a really tall glass and a smaller glass. You're going to need some water in each of those glasses, about halfway full, and you would want to have some salt and a little bit, have some salt and some food coloring. If you have 2 colors of food coloring, that would also help us out. If you want to collect those things, I can put those in our comment box.
So just to give our viewers an idea of where we are now, we've just actually exited the main channel. You can see behind us is the Port of Redwood City. We also have the recyclery and some really nice office buildings off to the left, and another small piece of marsh as well. So it is kind of windy out here, but it is very sunny and very pretty. So hope you guys are getting a little view of this.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and do this experiment. If anybody wants to do it with us, like I said, 2 glasses about half full of water, some salt. If you have 2 colors of food dye, or even 1 color of food dye would work, you can go ahead and grab both of those. Hi, Kelly. All right. See if I cannot make an entire mess here. So the first thing I grabbed is 1 container with water. I added 1 color of food coloring here, and I'm going to go ahead and add some salt to it. And I'm going to go ahead and give that a good stir. Mix that up really well. And then in my other container of water here, I'm going to add a different color. Maybe. And we'll go ahead and mix that one up as well. All right. So for this to work best, what we do know is that when we add this salt water in, when we add the salt into our water, we've changed the density. We've changed kind of the thickness of the water. We've made it heavier as a body of water. And so this should sink. So I'm actually going to mix mine together in a graduated cylinder, but you can mix these just into one of the classes that you have. So leave your salt water at the bottom. You can pour your fresh water on top of that, and you should end up with 2 different layers of colors if everything goes according to plan. So I'm going to go ahead and pour in my salt water here. And I'm going to go ahead and see if we can get my fresh water to float. All right, so we've got 2 different colors of water here. One is floating up on top of the other. And hopefully at home you were able to have some success with this as well. And we're going to try one more thing that may or may not work. Depending on if I made my water salty enough, I should be able to actually get an egg to float kind of right in between. Oh, release the egg. So if you guys can see it, the egg has found that place where that salt water and fresh water have mixed perfectly. And this egg is actually floating in the middle of our container.
That's amazing! Look at it! It worked! That's so cool.
How I'm going to get the egg back out, I haven't quite figured out. But for now, the egg's going to hang out in our container. If you have an egg at home and you want to be really careful dropping yours in, you can try that part of the experiment as well. Those are all safe things to try at home. And if you don't have those materials on you right now, of course, you can always try those later on. You can always ask parents for help with that. Or if you're a parent and you're watching, this is a fun experiment for kids pretty much all ages to try. I have done this with kids probably as young as about 4 or 5 with adult help. All right. So if you're checking out the boat view on the side there, what you might see is that we've finally got some people roaming around, checking out the view, getting ready to maybe do some experiments there. And it doesn't matter what color food coloring. If you want to try this with other colors, green, yellow, it really doesn't matter. Just 2 different colors help you to see that visual. You can see the egg. That's so cool. And believe it or not, I didn't spill anywhere on the desk. All right, so on the Brownlee there, it looks like they are starting to get ready, getting some people situated around our fish tanks. On board our boat, it was specifically built for our adventures that we like to do with students and families, and just children at heart and adults that want to come out and learn with us. And so we've got these 3 tanks there that are actually pumping water directly from the San Francisco Bay, kind of continuing to circle that so that as we do bring animals on board to study, those animals get a chance to stay in the same type of water that they're used to. It's staying in that brackish water, and it's helping to keep that temperature about the same as what they would have been living in when they got pulled out of the bay. And then they'll actually help to keep the oxygen levels up high enough for these organisms as well. And once we're done studying them, we will release the majority of them back into the San Francisco Bay, and a couple of them may come back to our aquarium to become part of our teaching crew along with our staff. We use a few animals to help us show the really awesome things that live down here, help connect people with that.
So Liz, as soon as the net goes in, I'm gonna pan over to I think Adam or Adrian, who are getting the plankton net set up so that you guys will get the opportunity to see it go in the water if we time it just right. If not, oh, we'll try to look at plankton later.
Thanks, Tiff. So they are just about ready there to slow the boat down, it looks like, and start getting ready to put out what our net that we use. The net that we use here at the Marine Science Institute is called an otter trawl, and it's all run by human power. And so these guys will be releasing those ropes out, and then eventually they will actually be in charge of using their muscles to pull that back in to get a closer look at different wildlife hanging out in the water. If we haven't said it yet, please welcome to our Earth Day event. Bye Bye Mattress and Peninsula Clean Energy helped us to make this possible, so we do want to make sure we thank those sponsors. Like I said, feel free if any questions come up, whether it's about exactly what we're talking about or not, feel free to add those to the comments on that Facebook live feed, and we'd be happy to answer anything that comes up. So they're starting to put that net out. The first thing they did is toss out that buoy. And that's one of our markers. Oh, I do not want to be large. And they've got that net starting to go out into the water. There we go. So there's no hooks, there's no bait. We just use this large net that they call an otter trawl. Basically, it's shaped like a giant ice cream cone. It's got a large opening at the front, and it's got a tied off portion at the back. And so as it gets pulled behind the boat, usually for about 10 minutes, they'll leave that out there in the water, and then they'll work together to use their muscles to pull this rope and net back on board. They'll put out somewhere around 100 feet of rope or so to put this out behind the boat. And you can see it's starting to get released. Glad to know that this is a better view than some of you have had on the boat before. Tiff has a great vantage point for us there. Got the bird's eye view of the whole thing happening. There we go. We can start to see it moving further and further away from the boat. And at some point, all we'll really be able to see is that little orange ball that's floating in the water. That's our buoy. That's our marker. Lets us know where the net is. It also helps other boats that might happen to be in the area realize that we are pulling something behind our vessel, help prevent things from getting tangled up in each other. Right there. Very far away. All right, then that looks like it should be getting pretty close to the end of its journey there. That's a good question. Our Brownlee camera got turned sideways. We're getting it fixed. There we go.
Is that all fixed?
Fixed, yes.
They're not gonna do that.
All right, we're gonna shift gears. Our fishing net is going to stay out there behind the boat for a couple of minutes. And I believe we are going to transfer over to the bow of the boat and see if we can get a view of the plankton net going out.
Oh, I totally lied. They will be pulling plankton during the second trawl.
Okay.
So teach about fish. Oh, look, there's a shark. Let's look at a shark.
Sturgeons are fun. All right. I'm going to zoom in and show you some video of some of our leopard sharks that hang out in our tank. So this is in our little aquarium. We have some different kinds of sharks that hang out with us. This is the same kind of shark that they're looking at there in the tank on the boat. A little bit closer view since there were some people that are there on our boat trying to get a look at the leopard shark. These are still pretty young. Most of these leopard sharks probably 3-ish years old, maybe 4. These guys finish growing around 8 years in age, and they'll get to be about 4 to 5 feet, sometimes 6 feet long. Not a huge shark. They're mostly a shark that feeds off of the bottom. So you can see a little view of its mouth coming around. Yes, every day on the boat is a new adventure with what we catch. We never really know. A closer view of our leopard shark. A ray would be pretty cool on our net today. A little closer view of some of them swimming. So in this picture here, we can see just how flexible sharks can be. Instead of having a hard, bony skeleton, like us as humans, sharks have a skeleton that's made out of cartilage, which is the same material that we have at our ears. It's the same material that we have in our nose. Much more flexible material that these sharks have here. So if you're going to look at a shark's body, they've got many different external body parts or external adaptations, and many of them are actually overlapping with fish. So sharks are basically a specialized type of fish. They've got eyes. So we've got eyes here. Behind the eye, they have a body part called a spiracle. Generally, this spiracle is helping to pump water over their gills and behind their eyes, giving them a chance to pump that extra oxygen through. On the back of their body, they've got 2 different dorsal fins. Underneath, hard to see from this angle, but they do have a mouth. They've got a nose, and they have something called barbels, which helps them to feel around in the mud for different things to eat. We've got gills. Most sharks actually have 5 gill openings on each side of their head. There are a few exceptions to that. There's a few that have 6 on each side and a few that have 7 on each side. Out to the side of their body, they have pectoral fins. Underneath, they have a set of pelvic fins. And 1 anal fin in the back. And then all the way at the end, we have the tail, or sometimes you'll hear scientists use the word caudal fin. And you'll find the majority of these on other types of fish as well. So as we pull our net in just a second, we'll see what kind of fish we have. But most of them have eyes and mouths and nose. Different number of gills, but they still have gills. And then these different fins we will find on each of those fish as well. We will not usually find a spiracle. Let's see if we can check in if we're ready to pull this net in. It looks like they are in the process of pulling the net up. So what you can see here is that the people are working together. They're moving in a circular motion, helping to pull that up. Looks like maybe we're going to get a little bit of a closer view. Move down to the same level. So they're just tying that net off before they pull it in. And we'll see that Maria and it looks like Adam today are our two crew members pulling in this net. And they're working together, kind of keeping an eye over the side, making sure that there's nothing, as they get close to the end here, that there's nothing that's going to injure anyone. Pushing everything down towards that bottom of the net, what we call the cod end. And it looks like there's quite a bit of things going on in that net. And we'll get a little bit of a closer look here in just a second. You can see something wiggling around there in that bucket. They're going to move it over into those fish tanks. So Maria's going to untie the end of the net and start to release those different fish out into our tank.
It happens. Oh yeah, and then you just have to like let the net go. It's just too heavy. I once caught a brown ray that must have been like almost 100 pounds. Wow. I could pick him up. And I'm just watching my fingers, so if you see someone in here that I want to circle with, yeah, so I want to make sure everybody's hands are behind their backs. So up here. Like perfect size.
So it looks like they're trying to empty the net. It looks like we're having maybe a little bit of video difficulty on the boat. Hopefully it'll come back in just a second. Get audio from the boat.
We're gonna have you guys keep your hands just behind your back. I'm also gonna be really careful. Yeah. Great job, guys.
Looks like they must have quite a bit in that net.
All right, so we are going to put some of these animals in buckets for you guys to see. Obviously, I wouldn't touch the jellyfish, but we'll make sure you guys get a chance to see them.
Our image on the boat right now looks like it might be slightly choppy. Looks like it's a little bit murky in the tank to be able to see exactly what they've got there, but it does look like they have a bat ray that's swimming around there. They're trying to show us. Looks like we also have some brown sea nettles. And a couple other kinds of flatfish here. We'll take a closer look at some of these fish in just a second. Another view of our sea nettles related to our jellyfish here. And some tiny little baby flatfish as well. Looks like maybe a halibut here. Looks like a lot of little shrimp hiding in the corner of that bucket as well. Yeah, it's like a perfect size ray, not too big. That's a pretty awesome experience to have had a bunch of surf perch actually giving birth while your kids were getting to watch that. It doesn't happen all that often. It looks like maybe there were 2 bat rays in our net here. It's a little bit better of a view of those bat rays there. Looks like they're gonna pick it up for us. Give us a closer look here. So they do have a stinger, and they're a little slimy. So she's gonna use a glove to get a little bit better of a grip. They're not hurting the animal. They're just kind of controlling where that tail goes. That tail does contain a stinger. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping ourselves as well as any others safe. I guess they're going to release this one and keep the other one to show us. All right, so what they're doing right now is probably checking to see whether or not this is a male or female bat ray. I cannot tell from the video, but I'm gonna guess with the fingers that this is a male. Very hard to tell. What we're looking for are claspers, 2 little white things sticking out in between. Yes, this is a little male bat ray here. These guys can get pretty big. 5 feet wingspan is not super uncommon. I've heard 200 pounds is also not uncommon. We're changing vantage points here. Here we go. So now we get a little look at the underside. They're actually completely white on this side. So for an animal to be dark on the top and light on the bottom is what we consider an animal to have counter shading. It's a type of camouflage.
It still has a little piece of it, the umbilical cord.
It's still a really young bat raven. How big are they when they swim out to live in the ocean? I'm not sure that there's a particular size that they have to be to move out towards the ocean. Unless Ashley has a different size that she knows of, but full grown, somewhere around 5 feet. So I would guess somewhere in between there.
Yeah, I would say that I've never seen any below like 3 feet out in like Monterey. So, you know, you got to give them at least maybe a year or so to get out there, get some girth before they brave the Pacific Ocean.
Awesome. So Tiff is saying from her experience diving in the ocean that somewhere around 3 feet is probably what they're looking at before they're moving out to live in the ocean. Yeah, these guys get heavy. Definitely by the time they're full grown, I have seen them weigh over 200 pounds for sure. And they do have a stinger. That stinger is kind of similar to your fingernail in that if it gets cut off or breaks off in an organism, they can actually continue to regrow. Trying to get you a closer view, I think, of that stinger there. When they're first born, they actually kind of look like little burritos. They wrap their wings around their bodies and protect the mom from the stinger on their way out.
Kind of like a cannoli.
Another good description. So when we do touch bat rays, we do touch just the wings. So we're keeping that stinger away from anyone is actually trying to touch them. So that's what we're getting to witness here, is that these guys here that are on the boat that just help pull this bat ray in, they're actually getting a chance to feel it. And what they generally feel is kind of a slimy texture to it. And so these guys are kind of coated in like a layer of mucus.
Kind of feels like a wet mushroom. If you haven't noticed, I went to culinary school, so all my references are culinary.
That's right. I said burrito. I got Alex on the hook there.
Oh, that girl does like her burritos.
Feels like slime, but just let people know in like 2 minutes we're gonna head to the bow. All right, let's head that way.
Very small bat ray, very cute, not too old. You can see these giant holes behind his eye there. These are those spiracles that we looked at on the diagram of the shark, helping to pump that extra water behind their eye and over their gills. A lot of fishermen like to grab them by that. That's kind of like somebody shoving their fingers up your nose. We don't recommend it. Okay, well, stay tuned for something else coming out of the tank here.
Stay tuned for something really exciting. Let's see what Adam can find for us.
I've got a nice big fish here. This is a striped bass. This is one that was introduced into our area. A lot of it was introduced for sport fishing. And so this was actually one that came in, was not originally in this area. It's non-native. But if you do go out fishing, there's a lot of competitions for striped bass and largemouth bass.
Okay, I'm gonna pass it over to you for a few while they start to set up the second net, and then we'll go check out the plankton net once the otter trawl is in the water.
Okay. All right, so while they are setting up those things, we'll take a closer look at a couple other examples of some of these fish. So this here is one of our flatfish. Like generally spend most of their time near the bottom of the San Francisco Bay. And when they're first born, they actually have one eye on each side. Yes. Sorry, let me go back and answer the question. Striped bass, I would definitely consider them to be invasive, especially up in the Delta area. Between them and habitat destruction, things like the Delta smelt are actually on the endangered species list. So they ended up eating quite a few of them as something that they found as a food source when they came over. Sure. So this flatfish here is a little bit different than the one they were showing us in the tank, but these are starry flounders. And so they're a fish that starts out their life with one eye on each side of their head, kind of like a goldfish you might have in your tank. And as they are starting to grow up, they actually start to lay onto one side of their body, and one eye migrates from the bottom side of their head up to this top side here. And so now they will live flat on the bottom, and they are white underneath. These guys hang out down at the bottom, so they don't really need that coloration. Generally, they're kind of buried under the sand with their eyes up towards the water above them, checking out, looking for food, looking for predators. So if we were to use our fish checklist here, we can see that they've got these big stripes along the side. It's a pretty distinctive characteristic of most of the fish that we have here in the bay. And so this one becomes our starry flounder. It doesn't become a starry flounder. It was a starry flounder to start with. It's a little bit different body shape, but still tends to be found close to the bottom of the bay. You can see a much larger fin along the side of their body. Eyes kind of towards the top of the head here. Kind of a larger mouth, but kind of a flattened body shape compared to things like your goldfish that you would buy at the store. So if we're checking out this one here, we're going to look for something that has eyes towards the top of their head, 2 dorsal fins on their back, kind of a larger pectoral fin, and this fish is what we call a staghorn sculpin. Might be hard to see, but right here on the edge of their gill, they've got these little horns that they can kind of push out for extra defense. I'm not going to be able to shoot them out of their bodies, just kind of flare them out to the side of their head, making them slightly harder to eat. All right. And similar to our striped bass, looking at something that actually hangs out more towards the middle area of the water, swims by pretty quickly here. Instead of having horizontal stripes, this time we have some of those vertical stripes, or what we tend to call bars when we're talking about them in science.
Are you guys okay to take a break and check out the plankton net?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, just right here is our plankton net. As you can see, this net doesn't have very big holes. That's because the animals that we will be catching today are actually going to be almost microscopic. So we have these very, very small holes that'll filter them out of the water as we pull them through the pull this net through the water. You can see that there's a hole right here. This hole is going to be where our collection bottle sits. So it's going to go ahead and screw in nice and easy into the bottom right here. Now that when the water goes through the net, all the things in the net are going to get filtered, and then they're going to collect in our little collection bottle right here, right? So now we're going to go ahead and lower it down into the water. As you can see, it's a little windy, so we're going to try to hopefully at the surface right there. See that orange buoy right there is helping keep the net afloat. Filtering the surface of the water, that's where you're going to find the most plankton because they like to find food at the surface. That's also where there's a lot of sunlight. Right? So we're going to let that sit for a couple minutes, and then we're going to come back to this. We're going to pull up that net, and we're going to see what we have in our collection bottle.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, so that net is hanging out there. Collecting some plankton, hopefully. Does anyone want to give us a guess of what we mean when we talk about something being a plankton?
So we're gonna pull up the plankton net in just a couple of minutes. So we will let you know.
Okay, thanks, Steph. So these plankton that they're trying to catch right now, these are considered drifters. So these are things that don't generally move very well on their own. There's a couple different categories of plankton. One category has to do with our photosynthetic organisms, or what we call phytoplankton. So things that are very similar to a plant. They use that sunlight, they use that water, they use that carbon dioxide, and they create oxygen, and they make themselves a sugar that they're using for their own energy. And we've got a second group of plankton that we call zooplankton or zooplankton, depending on how you like to pronounce it. And that zooplankton or zooplankton, that is our group of animal plankton. Off in the distance here, you might notice there's a ship out there. This is actually the USS Thompson. This is a shipwreck at this point. It's actually put out there intentionally and used as basically practice for our military. And so this ship sits out there. It's in a very shallow area. It's completely on the bottom. Depending on the tide, we can see kind of more or less of this ship out there. You can see kind of the white top to it, pretty well covered in bird poop. Lots of birds like to kind of hang out, use it as a resting spot.
Plankton net.
All right, so now our plankton sample is ready to collect. So now we're going to pull up the net. Now we can see in our collection bottle it's filled up with water. We're going to put it in our sample jar. So you can see it's a little bit clear glass. It'll make it easier for us to our sample collection is complete. As you can see, the water is not very clear. You have a lot of things floating suspended in the water. Some of them could be mud or dirt, and some of them could even be animals.
Okay. Thank you, Adam.
It looks like we're getting a little bit more of a view there of the plankton that they just collected in that jar. And we'll get a little closer view of some of those plankton in just a little bit. Couple more examples of fish. This is a starry flounder. We were just looking at that starry flounder in our videos. We've got a diamond turbot there. Looks like a yellowfin goby. A little bit different. Their fins are actually modified to stick onto things, help them hold on, like a little suction cup. There's a staghorn sculpin, just like the video we were just viewing before that. So we will check back in with the boat in just a little bit as they get ready to look at pulling up some samples from the bottom. So here's some other views of the surf perch here that we started to look at before we got pulled back to collect some plankton. So we can see some different shapes to their tail. Got kind of this indented tail shape, makes them a little bit faster We've got fins along their back, very skinny body shape from the top to help them camouflage with that water. And then the underside here, these guys actually have live birth, unlike most fish. Yeah, super good catch out there on the Brownlee today. Very, very lucky. And this one here is our barred surf perch with those vertical stripes here. And we were just given a quick glimpse of this fish on the boat. This is our diamond turbot. Sometimes you'll see them with lots of spots here, and sometimes we will see a few less of those spots as they try to camouflage with different areas of the bay. Just a little bit closer look of that fish that they showed us briefly on the boat there. You can see their gills opening and closing here. And the last fish that I'd like to share with us that we did get a quick glimpse of on the boat there is this California halibut. This is still a very small California halibut. These guys can get 3-4 feet long and oftentimes eaten by us humans. But they will often eat other fish and shrimp, things like that. They've got some pretty good teeth on them. And one of the ways that we can tell that they're halibut over some of our other flatfish is looking at this line that goes down the side of their body. This is what they call a lateral line. This lateral line helps them to sense different things moving in the water. There's different water pressure changes around them. And on the halibut, it's going to make a nice little arch right over the pectoral fin here. And on a lot of our other fish, it's much more of just a straight line down the side of their body. So there's our California halibut. Tip, how long do you think we have until the mud crab happens?
Probably maybe like 8 minutes. But if you guys want to watch what's coming out of the net, I can show that.
Yeah, let's take a look at the net.
Okay, hold on, I wasn't ready. I was looking for a test tube for a nudibranch.
That's fun.
Yeah, and the boats would be. All right, here we go. Looks like we got a lot of bat. Bat rays are a type of stingray.
Yes, you got a stingray.
We do love the excitement of all of our students, younger and older.
Yeah, you guys caught so many good stuff. You just gotta make sure we get everything out, and we're just making sure that we're keeping our hands safe.
Oh.
Don't get the bed in.
We got a baby leopard shark too.
Someone wants to see the nudibranch when you have a chance.
Okay, well I can only do one thing at a time.
I know, net first, but there was a request for the nudibranch.
Let's go check it out. But I gotta get a test tube, so you gotta go with me. Starboard side of the ship. It's very windy. Okay. Test tube. Across the bow. This is our bow. Okay. Port. Door. Maria. They want to see the nudibranch.
Awesome.
So nudibranchs are like a type of sea slug. Generally, their gills are kind of on the outside of their body. And basically, it means naked gills.
Let's try maybe over the blue.
Can't quite see it at that angle.
So one of my favorite animals is called a nudibranch. They're related to sea slug, snails.
How we doing?
They're called nudibranchs because
it
translates to naked gills because you can actually see their gills on their back, and then here's their horns. They're predators, so they'll eat sponges. There are over 1,000 species of nudibranchs. One of my favorite stories about nudibranchs is there were these children in Australia that were getting symptoms of jellyfish stings. And one of the doctors went to investigate and found out that the kids weren't swimming with jellyfish, they were actually swimming around the coral that had these nudibranchs hanging on the coral. Because nudibranchs, certain species of nudibranchs can actually eat their food and then incorporate that as part of their body. So for this particular nudibranch, they were eating the stingers of jellyfish, and that was getting incorporated into the
jellyfish. Nudibranch.
Yeah.
We can come back and check this out later too.
Yeah. He's not going anywhere.
Looks like another view of a bat right here. Maybe a little bit bigger than
How
the
many
bat we
batteries were
caught in
there?
the first net. Did you say 10?
Did you say 10?
Almost 10.
Almost 10. And a leopard shark, yeah?
We got diamond turbans. We got a big one right here.
That's a big bat right.
So it's been a really awesome day pulling in different kinds of organisms off of the boat. 10 batteries is quite a lot of batteries for one day. And to have a shark on top of that is super special. And we did get a chance to look at some leopard sharks a little bit earlier today, but we can always take a look at another leopard shark as we get a chance to see the one that they pulled up off of the boat. Looks like we're headed back up to get a bird's eye view of what's happening on the back deck.
So they're setting up for mud grab. So we're getting there.
And so one of the other parts of the bay that we do explore out on our research boat is that we take a sample from the bottom using something called a Peterson mud grab. So very similar to our otter trawl, everything here is run by people power. So we use our arms to work together in teams to lower this out onto the water and drop it all the way to the bottom. And then we'll use our arms working together as a team to pull the mud grab back up to the surface. Once it gets up to the surface, they get a chance to kind of explore what's in that mud, try to see if we can find any invertebrate life, any life that has no backbone inside of that mud. So what they're doing right now is starting to get people kind of lined up, making sure that we know how to operate our lines. We've got all of our people in place, so they're spreading out the line to help have these families help us lower this mud grab down into the water. And they're keeping those families slightly distanced from each other, trying to help make sure that we do our part and follow all of our COVID guidelines that we can. So the first thing that they're going to do is kind of explain it to the group, and then they will have a chance to actually do this. So they can explain it. You might see them practice before it actually enters the water. And once they pull up that mud, we'll get a quick little view kind of what that mud looks like, and then we'll explore some of the different animals that they might be seeing in that mud. And we'll take a look at some of the invertebrates that live here in the bay together as a group. Hi, Carly. Tiff says hi. All right, so they're picking up that line. It runs through a pulley system that will help us out. Use a little bit of physics to make it a little bit lighter. So they're just practicing at the moment, making sure that they understand the commands, and then we'll see it enter the bay.
We're just making our way to a little bit shallower water from our otter trawls. So our otter trawls were, I mean, they weren't in deep water, but it was a little too deep for our mud crab. So we just got to relocate the boat to a little bit shallower water so that we can get a really great bottom sample. So let's take a look at the Dumbarton Bridge. I don't actually know if you guys can see that. Like, I can't see it, but I'm wearing sunglasses, so I don't see a whole lot of anything on the screen.
It's pretty far out there. It's hard to tell.
Well, basically, on these short trips, our boat hangs out in between the Dumbarton and the San Mateo Bridge. So we like to make loops right around here. It also gives us a really good advantage of that deep channel for our otter trawl and also the shallower shoals on the left and right of the channel. And then on this side, I think I might be backwards. Over here we have Redwood City is coming up. It's a little hard to see again, like Liz said. It's really far away, but it's not that far away. But yeah, so Redwood City's right there. There's the channel that we came right out of. There's Bear Island. I don't know if you can see it. And then if we go this way, you get your Palo Alto, and back over to Menlo Park, Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and then back to the Dumbarton Beach. So hopefully we'll be doing our mud crab really, really shortly.
Okay, we can take a look at some of the animals that we might be finding in there while we wait, and you can just let us know when you're ready.
Absolutely.
All right, so some of the animals that we might be looking for out here in the San Francisco Bay, hanging out down by that mud, would be our invertebrate animals, these animals that do not have a backbone. For the most part, what we're going to probably be pulling out of the mud would be things in this group here, what we call a suspension feeder or a filter feeder. Here in this section, probably a little bit better. Here in this section, we'll probably find things like clams. We might find some things like worms, like our deposit feeders here. So suspension and filter feeders generally pulling small particles out of the water, whether that is plankton or recently little bits of dead stuff that are floating around in the water, like detritus.
Hey there.
Hi.
Are you guys ready?
I can be ready.
I think we're ready. Let's do this. Tell me if this view is terrible.
This view is okay so far. So they've lifted that mud crab up. They're about to swing it over the water there.
The second mud crab, we can actually switch to
I think we're okay. All right, so they're starting to lower that down there into the water. Got it to the surface of the water. They're gonna let it kind of free fall the last couple of feet. Dee and Dave say hi, Tiff. They're enjoying today's DV. All right, that should be the bottom. They're going to pick up that rope and they're going to pull it back up and see what they managed to get. All right, so they've pulled it up. You can see it's now closed. And they're going to bring this back around onto the boat. And they're going to empty it all out into a larger bucket. The bottom of our bay down here is pretty muddy. Pretty small grains of sediment. And they're just emptying everything out. And placing that Peterson mud crab back down onto the deck of the boat. And it might be hard to tell from here, but it is very full of mud in that bucket. It looks like they collected quite a large sample there. And so now they're just going to kind of spread that mud out between different people and give them an opportunity to look for different organisms or look for evidence of different organisms. So whether that's a shell, whether that's the living animal, or that's something that was left behind, like a casing from a worm. We'll take a minute and gently explore what they've got there.
Yeah, and I can bring you guys back down on the second mud grab if you'd like to just jump back into your presentation.
Okay. All right, so we were looking at kind of the things that they might find. So we take a closer look. Some of the animals that hang out here in the San Francisco Bay. This is one that we might have pulled up here. This is our spider crab. So you can see he's got really long legs here, kind of got little hooks on the ends of those legs, oftentimes found hanging out on some of our sea sponges. You can see they've also kind of covered themselves in little bits of algae and things from around their environment. This crab called the spider crab falls into this category of decorator crabs. And yeah, just a little bit of a closer picture here. So he's got two claws. They do have eyes. They're a little bit harder to see. They've camouflaged really well with all the algae that they've put onto the back of this particular crab. And here's just a view of them kind of camouflaging, hiding in the little folds or fingers of the sea sponge. This is some red-beard sponge that's hiding here in the San Francisco Bay. Some of the other invertebrates that we might get look like this. These guys were introduced to the San Francisco Bay along with bringing over some oysters, some eastern oysters. When they brought these eastern oysters over, they believe that a lot of these snails are probably hiding in between. These are Atlantic oyster drills, and these guys happen to do just what their name says. They're actually able to drill holes through the shells of oysters and actually eat the oyster out of their own shell that way. So here's the right side up. This little guy in the background's kind of cruising. They're not super fast. This invertebrate is a little bit faster than our snails. These are some of our bay shrimp species. You see they're almost like translucent. Makes them really good at camouflaging here in the bay. They're pretty small, usually about the size of your pinky finger, maybe even a little bit smaller than that for some of them. You see they've got tons of little legs that they're using for movement, along with their tail. There's a side view. And they go by pretty quickly here. These are our bay shrimp. This is one that there used to be a pretty big fishery for, and that fishery itself is kind of transformed into mostly these guys being fished for bait rather than things that people are eating. So this is often when you might buy, if you're going out looking for bait for different fish here. Striped bass tend to go really well for these. Different species of snail here. Unlike the Atlantic oyster drill, that's a predatory snail. This snail here is considered a grazer. But again, this is a snail that is not originally found in the bay. These are non-native species. These are eastern mud snails. Oftentimes you'll find them kind of in pathways, kind of in big groups hanging out along the edges of our bay, right there in that mud. A little bit closer view of our eastern mud snail. Something maybe slightly less common that we pull up would be some of our larger crabs here that fit into this cancer crab group. This cancer crab group kind of refers to the shape of their carapace, the shape of this shell here. So other crabs that might be in this group would be things like your Dungeness crab. If you guys prefer to eat crab, that's probably what you're eating in this area. Things like rock crabs would be in this group. And then this crab here, which is our purple slender leg crab, or sometimes you just see them labeled as a slender leg crab. You see their mouth is opening here on this front. Get our eyes here, and then our legs off to the side. This crab does have all of its legs, but one of the really awesome things about some of our crabs is that they do have the ability to regenerate their legs. So if something happens to one, they're actually able to regenerate, to regrow that leg as kind of needed if they have the resources that they need. You can take a look at the bottom. So you can see here on the bottom, this piece in the center is what they call a telson. Some people call it their tail. Essentially what happens is that tail folds underneath, and the females use the space under the tail to carry the eggs around. They'll push water through that area to make sure that each of the eggs is getting enough oxygen and things like that that they would get from that water. On occasion, you'll actually find a bunch of animals kind of growing on top of each other. So what we have here in this picture is 3 different types of organisms that are all living in the same place, literally kind of attached to each other. So we've got these ones over here, we've got the larger black organism here, and then these orange ones on top of that. We've got this kind of whitish gray one back here. These are oysters. This darker colored organism here, this is our bay mussel. And then our orange here is called a compound tunicate. So we've got oysters, we've got compound tunicates, and then we've got our bay mussel. And bay mussels oftentimes have these little threads here to help them attach to different surfaces. Just like strings or like an anchor, they're creating these, they kind of come out like a gluish like substance, and they actually harden into these stronger threads. Oysters, we've got a couple different species of oysters that hang out in the bay. You've got some of our native oysters, and we've got some of our non-native species that also have been introduced here. And then this little guy is our Japanese little neck clam. And our Japanese little neck clam is brought over probably through boats. A lot of times big shipping containers, actually shipping cargo ships, have to suck up water to help balance out their boat. And when they do that, a lot of times they're sucking up little bits of plankton with that. And when they do that and they get to where they're going and they release that water, they release that plankton, a lot of times these organisms are able to kind of settle out and establish a population. So that's what they think happened with these. Is a lot of our invertebrates here in the bay, they believe were probably brought over and introduced due to our cargo ships and things like that. It's just showing that. How are we feeling about invertebrates? Any questions we can help with before we check out a different category of organisms? Looks like Tiff is showing us the stern once again. Oh, maybe. Looks like they've got one of those bat rays out, letting some of the other passengers. That's a much better view of those claspers that let us know that this is a male bat ray. And it looks like they're going to release this bigger one. Go for a swim. Perfect 10 out of 10 on his dive. Looks like they've got the leopard shark out. This is definitely a young leopard shark, still quite small.
There's some other fish on the net here, so we're gonna go one at a time.
So again, they're gonna get a chance to touch this. This one's a little more rough than that bat ray.
So touch the side of the body.
Maybe a little more like touching Velcro or a light sandpaper. Leopard sharks are known to live about 25 to 30 years and grow between 4 and 6 feet long. Generally, the female is getting larger than the boys.
So this right here, these two finger things are called claspers. This is what makes them a male or a female. So this right here is a male, and the mouth is underneath the body. All right, everyone. So Brandon, you can take it to the bow, then we're gonna bring up the side.
You can see their mouth is on the bottom side of their bodies, so they're pulling most of their food out of the mud.
He has a leech on his eye.
Oh, I missed the shark leech.
On the other side, on the other side. I don't know if we can see it.
Oh, by his eye. Adrian will be nice and remove that before the shark gets released.
There's a few, yeah.
Good job. Okay, we're gonna go do our second mud grab.
Okay. So here's a closer view of that Peterson mud grab that they used to collect a sample from the bottom. It looks like they're about ready to do their second sample, so we'll get a view from this side. We've got some people down there that are working one of our lines, helping to make sure that that mud grab doesn't swing around as they're collecting that sample. They're learning how to tie that knot. One of the extra skills that you might get to learn on a boat trip with us.
hand washing.
Yes, all of the hand sanitizer. Good job, Maria. Again, she's handing out that rope that everyone's going to be using to pull. There's a sample from what they collected off the first mud grab. You can see it's quite fine, almost looks like clay. Jackson up there captaining our vessel, giving us the go-ahead to put equipment into the water.
Yeah, I got it.
Swinging that out over the water.
All right. My muscle team, go ahead and give me some slugs. Slugs. Great. Jump the rope. On your head, go ahead and shout.
Dropping that the rest of the way, all the way to the bottom. You can see it's pretty murky. We're in pretty shallow water. I would guess we've probably stirred up some extra mud into that water with our boat. You can kind of see that nice little mud cloud that we've created there.
All right, and hold. Go ahead and untie, Miles. All right, muscle team, go ahead and pull.
And we get to watch that mud kind of explode out of that Peterson mud grab. And tying it back off, safely securing it, and gathering back up that rope before they get a chance to rinse their hands off and dive in and find out what that mud feels like for themselves.
Let me give you guys some clean buckets.
Dinner. That looks like there's some worms maybe hanging off right there at the very tip.
Here, buddy.
Little tube worm. A couple different tube worms.
So you're gonna notice because the bay is not as rough as the ocean, the mud, the sediment is able to settle, and you get more like a clay-like mixture. This is one per family, okay? Bucket per family.
Looks like lots and lots of worms and lots of nice fine muddy clay sediment there. As you can see, we are not afraid to get our hands in and get dirty and find out firsthand what is in that mud, and we encourage our students and participants to do the same. Explore your backyard, explore a creek, get dirty, come out and play with us. My favorite bay invertebrate. That's a good question.
No, it's not dead. It's probably gone now.
I don't know, invertebrate. Sea pens are fun. Sea anemones are pretty cool. Hi, Brian. Happy Earth Day.
I like the comb jellies. I like the comb jellies.
That's a good choice too. or bell medusas, or the nudibranchs are cute.
Oh, where did that nudibranch go? Let's go find it again.
Good question, Brian. Our crew today is Maria, Adrian, Adam, Captain Jackson, and they are joined by Tiff, who is nicely filming live for us, and a crew member in training, Bethany. Oh, it's a foot pedal, Tiff. All hands free. One of our newer sinks added this year, over the past year, to give people an extra opportunity to wash hands and stay extra safe and healthy. I think we're on a mission to find, hi Adrian, we're on a mission there to find some nudibranchs, I think. Or maybe the nettles.
Where are the nudibranchs? Can I borrow those? I will give them back. No, just the nudibranchs. Can I borrow that? I'll give it back, I promise.
Anywhere where you can hold it still, I think will be better. Thanks for stopping in, Brian.
I was thinking of putting
that's
it
a better view. Can actually see all of those little gills hanging off of him. Oh, you can see his little face there.
I'm gonna put it, I think, in a bucket.
Okay.
A little bucket. Back to the deck. A little murky. Oh, there's comb jellies. I don't know if it'll focus on them, but there's a comb jelly. Oh, you can't see it. It's so cool.
I can see the outline barely. Let's see if I can try to circle it for. I guess not.
There's a comb jelly right there.
And kind of that thing that looks like a bubble there is a comb jelly.
Hold on, I'm trying not to drop my phone in the bucket. Don't mind me.
There's no actual stingers to the comb jelly. And there's our nudibranch off to the side. There's a closer view of the comb jelly. They kind of just look like little clear boba until they're in the water. And then you can see all these tiny little hairs coming off of the side of them that help reflect light in different directions, help them move around just a little bit. And there's a little closer view of our nudibranch trying to crawl around. Alex must not be watching anymore. We haven't had any nudibranch excitement in the chat.
Well, what's really fun is this is a type of aeolid, so it has those really big serrata on its back, which in some of the aeolid species, like Maria mentioned earlier, were the anemone, where they transfer the nematocysts into their serratas. But I can't remember if this is the native or the non-native species that we have in the bay. They kind of look similar to each other, but one is just a bit smaller. But they do like to live on the hydroids that we have on our docks. So we can find these pretty regularly on the MSI docks. All right, right, I'm going to put these guys back in the test tube. You are on your own for a sec.
Okay. All right, so earlier we collected some plankton. I'm gonna go ahead and show us a couple views of some of the plankton that we've caught in the past, and then we'll see if maybe we can get kind of an in-person view of what they're looking at on the boat in their sample. So as far as plankton go, earlier today we put out a giant, not giant, a small net to collect plankton. And so that helped to kind of concentrate the plankton into the collection jar at the end by having that net sit out there and having that water kind of flow through. What we end up doing is getting a variety of plankton that we're hanging out near the surface of the water. And we've got a couple different categories. So this category up here at the top, these are what we would call phytoplankton. Phytoplankton are our group of plankton that float around in the water. They're living things, but these guys do photosynthesis. So these actually take that sunlight energy, they take that carbon dioxide that we're producing, they take some water, they take some nutrients, and they run that through their process, and they end up producing oxygen that gets released out into the water, and some of that even out into the air. Phytoplankton in the water, along with our algae and things like that in the water, are said to produce as much as 50 to 80% of the oxygen that we have worldwide. And we've got a second group of plankton here that we call our zooplankton, or some people you might hear use the word zooplankton. And that is this group down here. And they've divided our animals into two smaller groups. They've divided those into a group that we call holoplankton. This is a group of plankton that spend their entire life being a drifter. They don't outgrow this. They always will get pushed around by the currents. So this is our holoplankton group here in the center. And down at the bottom of this group, we have a group called meroplankton. And meroplankton will eventually stop drifting. So these are organisms that spend their life drifting in the beginning, and eventually maybe they become strong enough to swim against the current, or they settle out to the bottom, or they attach themselves to some sort of substrate. And once they stop drifting with the water, we no longer consider them to be a plankton. So as far as being considered a plankton, they say that they need to be aquatic living drifters. So plankton can be found in freshwater, plankton can be found in saltwater, and sometimes you'll find, and oftentimes we find our plankton in brackish water. And depending on what type of water you're in, you'll see slightly different species of plankton. So we're just going to take a closer look at a couple of different plankton out here. So this is an example of a phytoplankton. This is a centric diatom. So centric diatoms are one of our phytoplankton. They do photosynthesis. They produce that oxygen for other organisms to use. Compared to this one, which is one of our zooplankton. This is one of our holoplankton called a rotifer. And they kind of extend their bodies and contract their bodies. It's 150 times magnified compared to what they should be. And you can see in this video here that they're actually pulling particles in the water closer to them. So they're basically using these tiny little hairs at the ends of their of their mouth to create our own little current, sucking plankton into them that aren't strong enough to go against that current. So they get stuck within this stream to wait for them to pull that in and actually become their food. So you can see it happens really fast. They've slowed that down to 1/4 of the speed that it happens at. A couple other examples of some of our phytoplankton. So these are pennate diatoms. Come in a couple different shapes, couple different colors. They're still very small. And these are also doing that photosynthesis. It's creating oxygen, taking in that carbon dioxide. And even though they are phytoplankton, which a lot of people think of as a plant, these guys do move slowly across the water. They do have these small little cirri, small little hairs to move themselves just slightly. They're still not stronger than that water current. Water current still has that main control over them. A couple other types of zooplankton here.
See, we're setting up the plankton station upstairs right now.
Cool. We will check in with you guys when you're ready to show us what you have in your plankton sample. So these guys here, these are juvenile copepods. So this is probably one of the most common animal plankton that we find in the bay and really in any body of water that the Marine Science Institute has. So let me go ahead and switch back over to the view at the boat, and they're getting ready to check out their sample underneath the microscope. And maybe we'll get a chance to see some of those same plankton that we just looked at up close and see that we are getting really close to the Marine Science Institute. You can see Stanford's boathouse there coming up next to our dock. Our boat is getting very close to the end of its journey.
Organism that lives in the water and is alive.
You can see here at the Marine Science Institute, we will use a microscope that's been connected to a camera. And then that's connected to a TV screen. So it's a little bit easier for us to show a whole group. And Maria's just taking a couple drops. And sticking that onto our slide, which is the piece that goes underneath the lens. And they have a very full sample here.
So, what was that about?
So for the most part, what I see in the background of their plankton sample is one of the ones we just looked at together. And it's these big circular ones. These are centric diatoms, and they have a whole bunch of centric diatoms here. Looks like in the background there might also be a couple of pennate diatoms, maybe even some chain diatoms. But mostly what we're looking at here are examples of phytoplankton. We can listen to Maria, that's fine too.
To me, sometimes it looks like a Oreo cookie. Sometimes it looks like a macaroon. Get it depends on what I'm craving for the day. And they'll fill that up with oil. So these are horrible foods. They won't swim left or right. So they can't go up and down There's many different types of diatoms, many different types of phytoplankton. The diatoms are the most common ones. So here is one over here. Their body is made out of silica, which is a glass pretty much. The cool thing about their body being made out of this glass is when light shines through them, it reflects them.
Tiff, Dee would like to know if you can zoom in any more on the plankton.
I don't want to block the people behind me. Give me a sec.
We'll also put them in toothpaste and credit cards. If you ever look at your credit card, the holographic sticker in credit card.
If I go this way, is it upside down?
No.
What I'm trying to look for is some zooplankton, which are animal drifters.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
And so if you've ever seen SpongeBob SquarePants, he is a type of zooplankton. This is another plankton, but this is a zooplankton. He's not moving right now. This guy right here. This guy right here, this is called Tintin. And these guys are going to eat all the phytoplankton if you let them.
So they did find a zooplankton there. They found a tintinid and a ton of centric diatoms. And this little kind of square one in the middle there is a type of chain diatom.
Alive or not? This guy right here, this thing.
This is one of. Oh, there's a chain.
Are you guys ready to look at another sample?
Another copepod.
All right, let's look at another sample. Sorry.
It's okay.
I can hear the boat. Not through your screen, but through the walls.
Yes, we are almost completely docked up. Check out some of the invertebrates while we're waiting. We still got our plankton nettles.
Look at all those brown nettles. Those ones sting.
Now there is, I see one moving. I'm going to go down. Oh, wait, you see those things moving? Those are the copepods.
Look at that
They're
shrimp.
called Carolite and cyclopoid.
Little Korean
They have
shrimp.
2 antennas. Let me see if I can follow them around.
Oh, I'm back to plankton. So many centric diatoms. So many diatoms in general. There's a copepod.
Copepod exoskeleton. There we go. We got some movement.
This is not a This is a.
We got a polychaete.
This is a polychaete worm.
There's a polychaete worm, and there's a copepod in there.
And a copepod.
There's a copepod.
Here comes the copepod across the screen. And then it looks like our worm is wiggling down there in the bottom.
I can't see. No, I got double screen vision. Somebody's stuck.
Yeah, so if you see some movement, it looks like somebody's stuck. You can't tell what species that is. You can see,
Looks like a copepod.
it looks like a copepod, yeah.
Yeah, they've had a really diverse group of things that they pulled up in all their samples.
This is a polychaete worm.
We lost you.
Sorry, Matt, I got 10%, so.
There's our polychaete worm larva.
Where this is going to grow to be. Did you see those little hairs? Even though they're horrible swimmers, they do have ways to help them float in the water to help them have their buoyancy.
Well, Tiff, if you're down to that little bit
Even
of
though there's
battery,
no
do you want to
pork
maybe
right
step
now,
outside and say your closing remarks before we exit our voyage?
Sure, yeah, let me. The plankton are just so mesmerizing. Look at it. Look at it.
There's our worm.
And then they'll grow to be. All right, bye, worm.
As you guys can see, the boat has returned to the dock. Ashley waiting to say hello to all of the wonderful people that joined us in person on our Eco Voyage today.
Hi there. Okay, sorry about that. It's a little hard to coordinate a phone and a wire and all the things, but it has been an amazing voyage. Today I am, not to overuse the word amazing, but amazed at the amount of Liz already mentioned it earlier, the diversity that we have seen today, with our net, with our invertebrates, with our plankton grab. The bay is thriving, and it's so great to have spring, allow us the opportunity to get back out and to share it with all you guys. So I just wanted to say, thank you for joining us on our adventure. Every student that has ever crossed our gangway has, left with a greater appreciation of the San Francisco Bay and the organisms that call it home. I hope that you will take some of the great information that you learned today, that you saw today, and share it. I believe by participating in our event today, that you have become a more enthusiastic super steward of our environment. And I really appreciate you joining us and being allowed to hang out with you this afternoon. Please join us next week, next Saturday. We're going to be doing a few more online events, and we're excited to have you. So hang out with us and get some more nature-inspired lessons about the San Francisco Bay.
Awesome. Happy Earth Day, everybody. Thank you once more to our sponsors, Bye Bye Mattress and Peninsula Clean Energy, for helping us to make today possible. I agree, Maria, more events would be awesome. This was a first for us, trying to launch a live event of a Facebook live event of a live event that we were hosting. So thank you for the feedback. Thank you for participating. We will be definitely looking into more opportunities. Happy Earth Day, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. We are going to sign off.